Hello and welcome to Ati's Conflict Studio, where we try to manage conflicts. Because we know not all conflicts are to be resolved. Some can only be managed without a final resolution or reconciliation. Let's start today's episode with a question. Have you ever been in a situation where someone made a decision that seemed completely unreasonable to you? You thought, that's absolutely crazy. Why would anyone choose option A over option B? And no matter how hard you tried, you just couldn't understand the logic. Now, imagine a scenario that I will describe, which is based on real facts, with some modifications to remove personally identifiable information. Two colleagues at a company, Rachel and Tom, both receive a severance package offer. But the company will only move forward if both of them accept the deal. Tom, a father of two, sees this as a fantastic opportunity. The package will help him pay off future college expenses and give his family a financial cushion. To him, accepting this offer is a no-brainer. Rachel, however, is only 1 year away from retirement, and from an outsider's perspective, should even be more eager to accept the offer. The package is generous, and she's close to leaving the workforce anyway. But Rachel refuses.
Wow.
Why? Because she believes the severance offer is part of a broader pattern of ageism in the company. While she would benefit personally, she worries about the impact on future employees, those who may be pushed out unfairly in the years to come. She wants to push for a policy change, even if it costs her financially. Tom thinks Rachel is being irrational and holding back both of their futures. To him, it feels like she's stubbornly clinging to an abstract principle at the expense of their financial well-being. He wonders, why sacrifice a guaranteed benefit today for some hypothetical policy change that might never happen? From his perspective, Rachel's refusal isn't just frustrating. It feels like a betrayal of common sense. Rachel, on the other hand, sees Tom's insistence as self-centered and short-sighted. She thinks, is he really willing to turn a blind eye to a pattern of age discrimination just to secure his own financial comfort? To her, Tom's eagerness to accept the severance package makes him seem complicit in a system that might one day hurt him or others, just as it's hurting her now. The tension between them grows. Tom feels Rachel is sabotaging a win-win opportunity for no good reason. Rachel feels Tom is prioritizing his personal interests over fairness for the broader community. Who is right here? The truth is, neither of them is wrong. Their perspectives are shaped by different cultural mindsets when it comes to decision-making and responsibility. Tom approaches the situation with an individualist mindset, focusing on his family's needs and personal gain. Rachel takes a collectivist approach, prioritizing the well-being of a larger group, even if it doesn't benefit her directly. What are the collectivist and individualist cultures? Now that we've introduced the different styles of collectivism and individualism, let's take a closer look at how we can define these concepts. Understanding the core characteristics will help us identify and recognize them more easily in everyday interactions. These concepts stem from cultural dimensions theory introduced by social psychologist Gerd Hofstede. Collectivist cultures emphasize group harmony, community well-being, and interdependence, while individualist cultures prioritize personal freedom, self-reliance, and individual achievements. Each approach has its own strengths and challenges, especially when it comes to communication and conflict resolution. When we talk about collectivist and individualist cultures, it's important to remember that these distinctions don't apply to every person within a country. Cultural tendencies are broad patterns observed through decades of research in fields like intercultural communication, sociology, and psychology. These patterns help us understand how groups, on average, tend to prioritize values like independence or group harmony. Of course, individuals within the same country can differ greatly based on personality, life experiences, and even regional influences. With that in mind, researchers have identified certain countries where these patterns tend to show up more prominently. Some examples of collectivist cultures. Many countries in Asia, the Middle East, Africa, and Latin America often lean toward a collectivist mindset. In these societies, family, community, and teamwork are central. Long-term relationships are highly valued, and people often avoid direct confrontation to maintain harmony and mutual respect. Some examples of individualist cultures: the United States, Canada, Australia, and much of Western Europe tend to lean more towards individualism. These cultures emphasize independence, direct communication, and personal achievement. Conflict is often seen as a necessary part of problem solving rather than something to avoid. Interestingly, this cultural divide also shows up in the way people approach personal branding. In more individualistic societies like the US, there is a strong focus on building a distinct personal identity, whether it's through social media, professional networks like LinkedIn, or public-facing roles. People are encouraged to highlight their individual skills and accomplishments as part of their career development. In collectivist cultures, by contrast, the emphasis often remains on the reputation of the group, organization, or family. Success is seen as a shared effort rather than an individual achievement, and standing out too much can sometimes be viewed as self-serving. We've explored how these cultural differences shape communication and conflict resolution on a broader level. Next, let's zoom in and see how these contrasting values show up in everyday interactions. One of the most noticeable ways we experience these differences, whether at work, in relationships, or even during casual conversations, is through communication style. How people communicate isn't just about the language or personality. It often reflects deeper cultural values. Do we prioritize the group's comfort or individual expressions? Do we speak up immediately or hold back for the sake of harmony? Let's take a closer look at how these tendencies manifest in collectivist and individualist cultures. In terms of communication styles, they can be group-oriented or self-oriented. Communication style is one of the most noticeable differences between collectivist and individualist cultures. While these differences sometimes overlap with high context and low context communication that we discussed in previous episodes, here we'll focus on how cultural values around individuality and group identity influence the way people express themselves. Collectivists often communicate with the group's well-being in mind, prioritizing relationships over personal expression. Messages are often softened to avoid potential conflict or discomfort for others. Disagreeing directly with someone, especially a senior or a respected member, might be seen as disrespectful. Now, when it comes to individualist communication, the approach is quite different. In these cultures, people tend to be more self-expressive and direct. Sharing your opinion openly, even if it contradicts someone else's, is often seen as a sign of honesty and confidence. It's not about being confrontational. It's about being clear and transparent. In fact, disagreements are usually handled head-on, with the belief that addressing issue directly leads to better solutions. People aren't expected to read between the lines. What's said is generally what's meant. So while a collectivist might choose their words carefully to preserve harmony, an individualist is more likely to prioritize clarity and efficiency in communication. Let's look into an example. Imagine a marketing team preparing for a big presentation. Mark from the US suggests a bold new strategy. Priya, who grew up in India, disagrees with this approach but doesn't voice her opinion in the meeting. Later, she shares her concerns privately with her manager. Mark is confused. Why didn't she just say something in the meeting? Priya, however, feels she showed professionalism by not challenging Mark in front of the group. The key takeaway? In collectivist culture, communication often prioritizes group harmony, even when it means sharing feedback in more private, indirect ways. In individualist cultures, voicing opinions openly is seen as contributing to the group's success. So, if communication styles can vary so much based on cultural values, what happens when disagreements arise? How do collectivist and individualist cultures approach conflict when it inevitably shows up, whether at work, in relationship, or even in everyday decisions? Now let's discuss preserving harmony versus protecting individual rights. When it comes to conflict resolution, cultural values significantly shape how people respond to disagreements. From preserving harmony versus protecting individual rights, the way people handle conflict is deeply influenced by cultural values. In some cultures, avoiding conflict is seen as a way to protect relationships, while in others, addressing issues head-on is viewed as essential for growth and fairness. Let's break down these differences and see how they play out. In collectivist cultures, conflict often is avoided to maintain group harmony. People may seek a trusted third party or a mediator to resolve the issue quietly rather than addressing it head-on. Public confrontation can feel disrespectful, especially when it involves authority figures. In individualist cultures, conflict is seen as a natural and necessary part of growth and decision-making. People tend to address disagreements directly, expecting others to separate the issue from the relationship. Personal rights and fairness often take precedence over group consensus. Let's look into an example on a project disagreement. Imagine two colleagues, Anna from the Netherlands and Yusuf from Turkey, collaborating on a project. When Yusuf disagrees with Anna's proposed strategies, he hesitates to speak up in the meeting, later discussing it privately with his manager. Anna, however, directly asks Yusuf why he didn't share his concerns with the group, assuming open dialogue would lead to a better decision. Yusuf feels blindsided by her directions, while Anna feels frustrated by the delayed feedback. The key takeaway? While individualist cultures often see open debate as productive, collectivist cultures may view the same behavior as disrespectful or disruptive. How does decision-making work in collectivist versus individualist cultures? As we'll see, cultural values play a big role in how decisions are made, especially when it comes to balancing individual autonomy with group priorities. And when it comes to decision-making, this often comes down to a choice between consensus and independence. In collectivist cultures, decisions often involve consulting family, elders, or community to ensure that the outcome benefits the group as a whole. In individualist cultures, however, the emphasis tends to be on personal autonomy. People are encouraged to make decisions based on their own needs, goals, and passions. A great example of this dynamic can be seen in the Disney movie Elemental. Have you watched it? In the film, Ember, who comes from a collectivist family-centered culture, feels torn between taking over her father's shop to honor his legacy and pursuing her own passion. Her father sees the shop as more than a business. It's a representation of their family's identity and community contributions. Ember, however, struggles with the decision because while she deeply respects her family's values, she also yearns to follow her own path. This tension between honoring the group's expectations and following personal dreams is a perfect illustration of how cultural values shape decision-making. And these decisions go beyond the moment. They influence relationships, careers, or even how we define success. To summarize, in collectivist cultures, decisions are often made through group discussions and consensus. Personal preferences may be set aside for the greater good. Major life choices, like choosing a career, may involve consulting family, mentors, or community members. In individualist cultures, decision-making tends to be more autonomous, with individuals expected to choose based on their own needs and goals. People are generally encouraged to follow their passion rather than conform to group expectations. Consulting others is often seen as helpful, but not an obligation. The key takeaway? While individualist cultures value self-driven choices, collectivist cultures often see big decisions as family or group matters. Now, let's see how we can bridge the gap, adapting to different cultural mindsets. Understanding these differences can help prevent misunderstandings, especially in diverse teams or cross-cultural relationships. Here are a few tips to navigate these situations. If you are an individualist working with collectivists, take time to build trust and relationships. Rushing into tasks without first establishing rapport can create friction. Don't mistake silence for agreement. Follow up with open-ended questions to clarify responses. Pay attention to indirect feedback. It might reveal underlying concerns that weren't stated explicitly. If you are a collectivist working with individualists, don't be afraid to voice disagreements directly. In many individualist cultures, this is seen as constructive, not rude. Be comfortable highlighting your individual contributions. Self-promotion is often expected in individualist workplaces. Expect a more task-focused, result-oriented approach than decisions rooted in relationships. In conclusion, it's all about finding the balance. Neither collectivism nor individualism is inherently better. They both bring strengths and challenges. By understanding how these cultural frameworks influence communication, conflict resolution, and decision-making, we can work more effectively across cultural lines. So, next time you encounter a decision or conflict that doesn't make sense to you, pause for a moment. Could it be that the other person is approaching the situation with a different cultural lens, and that small adjustments might help bridge the gap? Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. In the next episode, we'll explore the role of power and hierarchy in conflict resolution, and how different cultures and workplaces approach authority, decision-making, and fairness. Got a story, question, or experience you'd like to share? We'd love to hear from you. Remember, not all conflicts can be resolved, but every conflict can be managed. See you in the next episode.